We are down to one more conversation, and we are going to put our chairs to use one more time. One of the things that's really exciting for me as MC is to have some side conversation and get to know some of the speakers if I didn't already have conversations with them. And I think this is going to be a really fantastic conversation about AI and the future of learning. First, you may have seen before a guest that we've been privileged to have, and I'm excited has joined us again, is Ben Gomes, who's the Chief Technologist for Learning and Sustainability at Google. And I love that he has fully embraced the challenges, especially with learning, which I think is one of the most fascinating and hardest and worthwhile problems to pursue. So we're so glad to have him on our team and to have him on the stage. We also have Kirsten Baesler, who is the current superintendent of public instruction out of the beautiful state of North Dakota. I was chatting with her a bit, and she's just done some really amazing things and has a real eye towards thinking about technology and education. And I'll tell you a little secret is that she is going to be soon the incoming assistant secretary for elementary and secondary instruction. So it'll be very exciting to hear about perspectives and thoughts. And then probably the best moderator that could be found on this campus is Rob Reich, who is proudly an alum of the Stanford Graduate School of Education and the McGregor-Durand Professor of Social Ethics of Science and Technology. That all fits on one business card, right? So please welcome our guests for our final panel.
All right, well, you'll have to judge about my moderating skills, but one of the tasks that I know sits before me is that at the end of the day, a long day of lots of conversation and probably lots of listening, part of a good moderator task now is not to be boring, to make things a little spicy perhaps, and maybe for that reason, the organizers invited a philosopher to do that. I'm gonna sit down, but I view the social utility of a philosopher. You may think no social utility, but I want to suggest if we have some social utility, it's that we can be productive irritants to conventional wisdom. And that's the spirit in which I want to talk about future learning. So we spent the day here thinking about the future, an AI future that involves teaching and learning at the heart of it. And one of the things which I love in being around educators, including people in the AI tech world when they come to think about education, is that unlike a lot of other tech bros typically that I interact with, people in the education space know that the most important thing to begin with is something that this conference begins with, that our AI future is a design problem, not a prediction problem. We are thinking about how we can collectively design for a future we want to have, rather than sit back passively and react to and predict the future that's going to happen to us. Or if we're in that passive role, we are not exercising our human agency to try to think about the kinds of ways we want to produce an AI-infused teaching and learning and human potential future. Now, I'll share that listening to that last conversation made me reflect upon an invitation I got just recently, which was, dear Rob, you're a philosopher who thinks about AI. We would like you to write an essay for a public journal that's devoted to thinking through a post-AGI future, post-artificial general intelligence future, where what they explained they meant by that is a world in which machines are doing all of the paid work. What is left for schooling if there is no reason for schooling to be vocational? No one has to go get a job. Everything is done by the machines. We have this enormous social surplus. We share the wealth through basic income. And what are we left with for schooling? So that's the essay I'm working on. That's a different sort of project than the one we've been addressing here today. But if we're thinking about the 10-year, 20-year future, since there are companies whose sole mission is to fully automate the economy, I wonder how they're thinking about education. All right, that's a long-winded lead up now to get our guests into the conversation here. I want to begin with this design thinking orientation. We want to be a proactive force in designing for a future worth having. And let's begin philosophically. I'm inclined always to begin high altitude, 35,000 foot level, the macro picture. Let's define our frame well. It's not just an AI future infused into schools. If teaching and learning is the heart of what we care about, That's something that in principle happens across the lifespan. We're designing, as it were, for an AI future for human potential, for human learning, for human growth. I'm curious from the company perspective, if you could share with us, Ben, a bit about some of the design principles or how you think about this, not merely about the classroom presence, but again, human potential and growth more broadly. And then Kirsten, I'd love to invite you into the conversation as well about that on the adoption side, or if you have other views about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so when I think about human potential, there's so many aspects to people achieving their potential. I mean, people in this room have achieved their potential to a large extent through many different factors coming to bear. But I think AI can play a huge role in removing a lot of barriers that people who don't get to this point actually experience. And I think it happens at many levels. Some of it was in the previous conversation, like barriers to sort of just physical access to things, ability to read, sometimes physical disabilities. So there are tools now that can convert text into audio. There are tools that will help you learn to read as well. At that whole level of like physical access, there's things that we don't think about quite as much here, but in much of the world, people are learning in a second language. And I go back to where I grew up in Bangalore, and there are people there who go to school in English. They don't speak English at home. And so they're memorizing what they get in school. Now, if you can do translation on the fly, you can help them both with getting the actual concept they're trying to learn, not just the words the teacher is saying. So there's that whole layer of that basic access. Above that, I think there's the layer of actually, when you're interested in something, how do you pursue that interest? Adults around you may not have the expertise to actually help you there. And so AI, I think through universal access to it, can allow you to pursue those roads of your own curiosity. And I tend to think of human potential, meeting your human potential as like this intersection of what interests you, what motivates you, and what the world needs. And so if the things that motivate you don't have that expertise around you, you're stuck. And so you end up doing something that doesn't achieve your potential. And at the highest level, I think, for all of us in this room, I think it's an open question as to whether we have reached our full potential, given the potential of AI today. I use AI a fair bit, but I'm sure there are many ways in which, in my daily work, I have not thought of using AI yet. That is still an ongoing process for me, and I work in a technology company, and I work on learning, and I work on AI. And I'm sure that's true for much of the establishment across many of these fields. So I think there's many ways in which you can reach your potential. I think we can create the tools to help with that and also create the access to those tools, right? Making these things available broadly across the world. Like we have like simultaneous translation in like Chrome OS, like the teacher speaks and the students can see the translation happening right there. There's just an example of it. Notebook LM allows you to do this translation of the text into something audio or something visual. So there are many of these tools we're beginning to build, but there's a huge amount of potential, I think, to break those barriers to it.
Yeah. So Kirsten, do you have similar thoughts perhaps? Maybe in North Dakota, you're also designing technology tools for integration, but if it's not from the base technology up, on the adoption side and how you then integrate things into teaching and learning, do you have some design principles to share?
We certainly do. First of all, I agree with everything that Ben said. I'm going to double down on that quite a bit, I think. But first, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I wasn't able to get here right away this morning, but I've been here since 11, and just the opportunity to be able to sit and listen and learn and the table discussions. I'm a servant leader, and as I prepare to go to Washington, D.C., as soon as the government opens up again and I can get sworn in, I'm truly blessed to be able to spend this time with you as I prepare to become the Assistant Secretary of Education. And so thank you for that, and I appreciate that. I also really appreciate the puffer exercise, because even though I've been an elected official for 13 years now, lots of speaking engagements, lots of media interviews, I get nervous every time before I speak. And I remember Johnny Carson, for those of you that remember, that was even before Jay Leno, but he'd say that he was behind the curtain, before they'd say, "Here's Johnny," he would get very nervous, and it meant that it mattered to him. Mm-hmm. And so you are my people. I was a library media specialist, and I was a technology integration specialist before I was elected as a state superintendent. And so this has been a part of my core for over 30 years. And so it's important to me that we have this conversation, and I just wanted to share that with you. So yes, this is deeply important to me, has been for my 30-plus year career. And I think when I think about AI and expanding its human potential, I don't see students sitting in front of screens. I really see teachers developing personalized and actually competency-based lessons that are relevant, that make our young people, our learners, do harder human things so they can spend it in that way. And I think AI can accelerate that. It can, in my state in North Dakota, it can provide that instant feedback, that translation for our new Americans growing up in the Fargo, Grand Forks area. It can provide the access to our students who are living in the tribal nations that North Dakota shares its borders with. And I think that when that happens, it's really not about efficiency for me. It's really about agency, engagement, and belonging, to be quite honest with you. And so I think that's how AI expands that human potential for the kid that's, on the ranch that is literally, I think, 110 miles away from the nearest McDonald's, and that new American, and those students that are on our tribal land. So I think creating relevant tasks that are important to each of the individuals is truly freeing up our teachers. So the sense of agency and belonging, because then our teachers can know their name, know their story, and really know what their goals are. And that's where I see it can really accelerate.
All right. I want to give voice now to, I don't want to call it a skeptical view. I share and would happily also, sing the praises of design principles of the kind you both just described, design for agency, for engagement, for motivation, for belonging. And insofar as there's either philanthropic efforts or public monies or private investment to build AI tools that help deliver that, count me as all in. However, if I were to build a little bit from an anecdotal base of my own experience, but also then think about the teachers and other data I look at about how, at least today, AI is used in schooling, I'm a little more worried. Why am I worried? Because, for example, the generic AI tool of the frontier AI, the chatbot, invited and it released into the world as a kind of general purpose tool, now adopted without any particular design guidance into education by students, is a standing invitation for people to cut corners and to cheat or to fail to exercise their own judgment in cultivating skills. If I were to be even more dramatic, but still rooted in truth, I'd say, what are among the most popular uses in schools of current AI tools? It would be to cut corners in the classroom that are unenforceable realistically by the teachers and the administrators, to potentially create images and videos of things that parents and teachers would not want them creating, non-consensual intimate imagery, videos that help facilitate bullying. I heard a story just this week, middle school playground, spat. One kid made a Sora video of the other kid doing something horrible and then spread it around everywhere. The AI tools that are just generic for us to use, not designed for the purposes you described, I'm much less sure they're having a good effect. And Ben, if I could now direct this at you, since you're at Google, if you just say, hey world, here's Gemini, start playing, in the schoolyard what you get is what I just described.
Yeah, so we've been thinking about this problem for a while. I mean, there's a huge responsibility associated with these tools, and there's a lot of sort of testing and so on that goes on. And there's these problems that have been known for a long while, like things like hallucination and so on. But some of those problems have been getting a lot better.
Yes.
What we did, we realized that for learning to actually happen, you really need to create a tool to fine-tune the language model to actually have the kind of interaction that we know is good for learning.
Yes.
And so what we did was we looked at the learning science, and we have a pedagogical team. In fact, I see the head of the team right here. And so we looked at what principles we needed to come at it with and turn those into metrics. and turned those into training and created a fine-tuned model called LearnLM that actually optimizes for that pedagogical state, for keeping you, for not giving you the answer directly, for continuing to encourage you to be in that state of curiosity rather than like just getting to where you want to go immediately, because that process, that struggle is critical.
Yes.
And then we built that into our core Gemini models. And now having that in the models, we have building products like guided learning in Gemini that exhibit those properties. Now, I mean, there's a lot further to go, right? There's a lot more about learning science that can be built into that. But that's where we see that process of maintaining that productive struggle, maintaining that curiosity, maintaining the student on the edge of where they want to be to achieve that goal.
If I'm on Kirsten's side of adopting it, I want to, I use Google products in the school, I have an enterprise license, or I can just describe this here at Stanford because it's true for us at Stanford as well. You've now described to me this learning notebook LM tool. Great, I'm going to credit it with everything you just described. Can I tell students in my classroom that the generic Gemini features are shut off and you're only able to use these learning features that Google has so kindly designed?
That's not currently an option, but it is possible for you. You can definitely tell them to use guided learning in your use case. That's available to all the schools and all the classrooms.
Yes, yes. All right. I'm sure in your position as superintendent, you see some of the less celebratory uses of these tools. Tell me a bit about how you're thinking that in your position in North Dakota.
So we have developed guidance for our schools. Again, every state is a local control state. Every state is a local control state. And so not often welcome by our local school districts to have something come from the state education agency. But we did provide guidance. And the guidance so they could create their own policies in their own districts. And we started out with an HAIH. Start with a human query, the human curiosity. Curiosity is so important. Use the tool of AI, and then end with the H, the human evaluation. And 30 years ago, when I was a school librarian, is what we were called way back then, instead of a library media specialist, the same concepts were taught 30 years ago as we were putting in 5.25-inch floppy disks for Oregon Trail. But as a library media specialist, you need to have discernment. You need to understand which source is the best source for you at the time. You need to question. And then the internet became prevalent, and we were rolling in the Apple Macintoshes into every classroom. At that point, there wasn't deep fake, but there were fake websites out there. So how do you do that? So I really do embrace, and I am an AI advocate and a disciple. This is just the most recent iteration of the thing that will be in their life. And we either teach them how to use it, or they will be used by it.
Excellent. I also agree with that, but again, let me probe just a bit.
Yeah.
I don't know what the case is in North Dakota, but in the past 2 years, one of the recent trends in both private schools and public schools, I'm thinking mainly K-12 education, or middle school and high school in particular, is to ban phones in the school building. Why? Because the social media addictive properties are not conducive to learning.
Correct.
And often much worse than that.
I would agree.
That's a version of not learning to live with the technology. That's a version of saying, no, thank you.
Interestingly, North Dakota has recently passed legislation and has implemented a bell-to-bell cell phone ban this year. Our governor was a big champion of it. That doesn't mean that they're technology-free.
Of course.
And we have one-to-one devices. I'm very proud of the fact that North Dakota in 2019 delivered 1 gigabyte of connectivity to every single one of our even our most rural and remote. So we have that connectivity. 98% of our students have high-speed internet connectivity in their homes. That happened not by accident. That planning with USDA rural grants, that happened in the early 2000s. So I would say we have to be thinking 15 years ahead, not 15 months ahead. Same thing is true. I think we let the genie out of the bottle, to rip off one of the breakouts that I went to. The genie in the bottle we let out with social media. Right. We have to do that differently. That's part of the federal role. I think I'm nervous that we're at very close to the edge where we better get this figured out with federal regulations, state regulations, along with local policies in partnership with providers and companies and philanthropic foundations, because the last thing an educator needs is to try to follow 300 different sets of rules.
Right.
And so let's get ahead of this first. The other piece that I would say is we need to think about this. We can teach them how to use it, but it can be on a scaffolded, and that's what we do in education all the time. The access that a 17-year-old is going to have should not be the same access that a 7-year-old should have. So let's scaffold our exposure and the tools that are available on their school-issued devices and not have them be scrolling on their own devices.
Yeah, super. Can I make this super practical for a second and call this an utterly self-interested question, but just to go all the way from the 35,000-foot level down to, the ground floor. Let's imagine I'm a professor in a university in North Dakota, or in this case, as I am here. I was just on leave for 18 months. I left campus and went off to do a bunch of stuff outside the campus in the summer of 2023. ChatGPT had only come out a few months before. I've just returned to campus 5 weeks ago. I'm now looking and teaching students who have had 2 years of playing with all of these models. I have to decide very practically, what are the things I'm going to say in the syllabus, how I can construct the classroom. I'm not anti-AI. I want people, for all the reasons you've shared, to learn how to use the tools, but I have to actually give some guidance. I'll just share. I want to get what you would recommend to me, but my approach was experimental. I meant to find information. I wanted to understand how students were learning. So they were permitted to use any tool they want. They had to have an appendix that said, here's the tools that I used, and then a complete catalog of all prompts, mainly so I could see what that was and how people were using it. I want to share with you one person's response on the appendix through this. Dear professor, I used the chat model for 3 things. First, I read all the essays on my own, and then I asked the AI to summarize and synthesize them to help my learning. My prompt was, hey, sweetie, take these attachments, have a look at them, and see if you can synthesize and summarize them. Number 2, I then wrote my essay on my own. I uploaded it to the chatbot and said, I don't want you to write any new paragraphs. I just want you to revise and make some suggestions. Hey, babe, have a look at this essay I wrote. Would love your insights. Third thing, mental health support. And now I'm going to quote directly from the student. Babe, I really need you right now. Can you tell me I'm a good boy, the best boy, that I'm deserving of love? Now, I'm 90% sure I'm being just trolled by the clever Stanford in a completely unenforceable way, in which case my thought is like, good job, very, very sharp. But I did say to the student, on the 10% chance this was earnest, please get some help. All right, this is the issue I'm confronting now. How should I be telling students to use AI for writing?
So I think, actually, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, I can give this a shot. That's very interesting. But I think it is to the point of something that Ben had said earlier. First of all, and something that I had said, this isn't about creating a faster worksheet or a more efficient syllabus. This is about you getting to know your students.
Yes.
And so once you've done that, what I would say is use the learner's goal. Is that learner really adamant about that bell-to-bell cell phone policy? Are they really adamant about, the Argentine policy to buy beef from Argentina because they're ranchers, right? Find them, know their story, and then ask them to write their own paragraph about that. And then I would say, don't remove the rigor. Just have them write it on their own. And then have them ask AI to say, how can I make this better? What would you add to this? Mm-hmm. And then I would flip that and say, have ChatGPT or whatever the tool is, have your AI learning model take the adversarial approach. So you can see the flaws in your argument. And when you do that, it removes the opportunity to just say, oh, this was a writing piece. It helped them think analytically. They became agencies of their own learner, and it provided the feedback, and it was something that was relevant and engaging to that learner. So that's what I would say. And then I would hand all of that back to you as the human in this equation to say where you can take them further.
Yeah, thank you.
I think one of the aspects of it is, AI allows you to sometimes flip what an assignment looks like.
Yes.
So one of the things we have done, I was just looking at as an experiment, is professors using the AI, having the students actually explain an algorithm to the AI until the AI understands it.
Yes.
Right? And it changes what the nature of an assignment is,
Yeah.
but it gets to the core of what you were trying to get at with the assignment. As I was thinking about this, I was like, well, there are many reasons you might have assigned those works, and the purpose of that assignment could be the actual content, in which case, the AI processing it and all is fine, and provided you get the actual content, or it could have been that you want them to actually get skills of analysis of that content, which is a slightly different kind of skill. And I would imagine the tool you want to do, how you want to use AI for that is different. So one part of this, I think, is changing the nature of what assignments are, going back to what was the purpose of the assignment, because sometimes an essay represented many different purposes at the same time, all the way from like spelling and grammar, all the way to like actual analysis and content understanding. But maybe we can break these things down and actually have different interactions that AI permits, because it's not that hard to set up many of these interactions. I've seen individuals do it in order to get that at exactly what you're trying to get at as your pedagogical outcome.
Yeah.
And I think the most important part is to never, ever remove the productive struggle that learner needs to go through. I also think that's where research universities like Stanford can help us as an education community learn the difference just between convenience and real growth.
Right. I feel almost pained to say this because it's ironic in certain respects. I'm the person on stage that's a philosopher by training. I'm inclined, perhaps intellectually or dispositionally, to think in terms of large picture ideals, romantic idealism about how wonderful things could be in the classroom. But although I don't disagree with any of the recommendations you just made to me, what I feel like it doesn't kind of take hold of is the idea that you're painting a picture of an ideal setting in an ideal classroom where students are intrinsically motivated to learn through some productive struggle. The teachers have all kinds of time to get to know every single person individually, know best how to motivate them. And now we insert AI and we get all these wonderful outcomes. When the really existing classroom is a space where a lot of students are not intrinsically motivated, they're instrumentally motivated. They would like to get a good grade and move ahead. The teachers are beset by 1,000,001 things to do and have all kinds of incentives to spend less time on something truly important than more time. And now AI enters the situation with an instrumentally minded student and teachers who are beset by 1,000,001 tasks, and it's a standing invitation to substitute the AI for the intrinsic aspect of what's at the heart of teaching and learning.
So I agree with you, but I will say that that's the way our system is today. In a world where we expand human potential, we've got to start at the system where I began, and that's our kindergartners. Actually, we need to start in preschool. We have to begin to eliminate the model of education where it is extrinsically motivated. And that is where I think AI can help us accelerate that. I truly do. In rural communities, course access to specialized services, those are things that we're struggling with. Like sometimes some of my students drive 90 miles for speech therapy or dyslexia therapy and whatever it might be. AI can certainly help that. But I think that's why we need to be partners. There can't be these silos between the federal government, a state government, between researchers, philanthropy, and educators. We need to be true, authentic partners. And when I say true, authentic partners, if you can give me a moment.
Please.
That is something I learned 15 years ago when I was first starting to prepare for this role. And I was waiting to meet with the chamber president, our state chamber president, because I wanted more internships, more opportunities for learning on the job. And it took us a while, his schedule, my schedule, to get our schedules to sync. By the time I got ready and had that meeting with him, I was prepared. I had a plan. And we sat down in the conference room table and he sat back. I was telling him my plan and he just chuckled at me. And he said, I thought we were here to talk about a partnership. And I said, we are. And he said, no, no, no. He said, you educators tend to all be alike, and I've been married to one for 40 years. And she was an assistant superintendent at one of our largest schools. He said, what you have is a plan, and you want me to support your plan. And I can do that, but that's a different conversation. Partnership is when we all sit down, you tell me what you need, I tell you what I need, we struggle, we get angry, we walk away because you're not meeting my needs, but partners come back to the table. And so I think that is where, yes, we need to graduate students that are intrinsically motivated, so when they reach your classroom, that it is about, you can have that utopia, but that starts in preschool and that starts in kindergarten.
Yeah, great. All right, we're nearly out of time, but Ben, I want to give you a chance to respond to Kirsten's lovely aspiration there, invitation to say, no plans, we want partnership. Tell me a bit about how Google, in designing these unbelievably powerful tools, is not delivering plans and scripts to people, but delivering partnerships to inform the design.
You know, I think I really loved what you had to say there. I think that from our perspective, even from Google Classroom, which has almost been for 10 years, we built that in collaboration with teachers. There are lots of teachers on our team as well, but we built it in collaboration with teachers because we had to listen to what they had to, we listened to what they had to say, and we actually listened and gave them a tool that they actually liked. I think the same thing has to happen with AI, but at a faster pace, because the technology is moving so fast. We are working with many school districts. I was just at Miami-Dade County, and they're adopting AI and they're experimenting with it. I think the important thing is for people to try, for educators to try and see what works, and then we can help support them in that process. We are technologists, we're not educators, right? But we are interested in education. We need to work with educators with an interest in technology. And that partnership, I think, can be really wonderful. And I can see it in Miami when I was there in the school district. I could see things that were working and I could see things that were not working. And it was really great to see how much people were trying to be creative with the tools that they had. And I think that process, then, once you find things that work, the next step is also broadcasting that out. And I think policy and other things can amplify the things that do work. So I think it is it is an existing situation that you're trying to retrofit in with the new technology. But the whole situation can change. And if it's done well, I think we can get to a much better place.
I couldn't agree with you more. And there are people that come and want to be my partner, and they're providers. And whether it's an app, and they'll tell me about what they did in another state. And I'm like, yeah, that's a great starting place. But I'm going to tell you what I've learned in North Dakota. And some will say, you're right, we're going to do this, this, and this. Thanks for sharing that insight into your state. The other thing that I'm going to give a shout out to Google too, because they truly are great partners with education. I was just reading though about Project Suncatcher, I believe is what it's called. And that's a whole other side of what AI is. I mean, we have energy needs. We have rare earth element needs in order to provide this. And to have Google thinking about the whole concept, because those are things that I struggle with in North Dakota. It's like, how are we going to continue? And I serve on, land boards and trust funds and things like that as part of my role. And we're trying to figure out how do we accelerate the infrastructure side and not just the app side of AI.
All right, so last question, and the moderator notes I've been provided say you get one sentence. You probably can predict how this goes. In the setting of educators, among the reasons why I find educators such a lovely group of people to be with is that there's an always standing aspiration of optimism and hope. So amongst philosophers, the end of any workshop or seminar is, can you summarize all the reasons why the next 10 years are unlikely to go well? Amongst the educators, here's the question. In one sentence, what gives you hope about this moment? How can we ensure that AI helps everyone thrive?
I can construct a very long sentence with lots of clauses. So I will talk. There's the teacher, the classroom I was in with a teacher who was engaged with the students while they were also using AI, where she was actually getting more time with the students while they were also using the AI to answer questions on the side. I saw that the possibility of a classroom where the teacher actually had that connection more strongly than the classroom, the teacher standing in front of the classroom and talking. And I thought that was the thing that gave me the most hope for what the possibility of this is.
All right. That's pretty good, but about 6 sentences.
I know.
Kirsten, you get the last
Figure out the
word.
clauses.
What gives me hope today in this moment starts with what has always given me hope. I deeply believe in the teachers of this country. And I deeply believe in the mission of education. With AI, it has provided the opportunity to make sure that my students in North Dakota, students in so many parts of this nation, this country, who's the student that is the last kid to get off the bus now has access to opportunity that they never had before because of AI.
Would you please join me in thanking our guests, Ben and Kirsten?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.